Hey guys, so glad you could make it. So I'm going to apologize straight away that I'm wearing glasses in this video as well. They are strategically hiding the bags under my eyes, so just deal with it because I'm trying to myself. Um so last year I made a Black History Month video entitled Fuck Black History Month, where I talked about a lot of the qualms that I have with Black History Month. As it stands right now, I really think I want to start making annual Black History Month videos because this is actually really fun for me. I learn stuff, you guys learn stuff, we all get a little smarter and grow as people, which is super important, I think. So last year, a lot of you guys actually reached out to me and asked me to do a video on the history of Black names, which I heard and stored in the deep recesses of my mind for a year. But here I am finally doing it, so don't say I never did nothing for you. And in order to talk about this, we actually have to go all the way back to the beginning, obviously, of African slaves and the existence of Black people in America. And in filming this video, I've actually learned that it's difficult for me to talk about slavery in this kind of analytical, theoretical, scholarly sense, probably because, generally speaking, I never talk about slavery, ever, for any reason. It's just a thing that I just learned about myself. But, for the purposes of this video, that's what I'll be doing. Because, obviously, African people already had names, right, before they became slaves. But one of the ways that slave masters would divide and conquer the race was to rename their slaves, along with, separating families and tribes and making it damn near impossible for any slaves to speak to each other. One of those name changes is still relevant to this day, which is naming slaves after founding fathers, and that's why you see today a lot of Black people's last names are things like Jefferson, Jackson, Washington, and Franklin. They would also give slaves short percussive names like Todd or Bill or Mary. They would also, don't want to say it was rare, it's just not something that we see the effects of anymore, which was giving them last names as first names, giving them, naming them after places like York. Now, there were a few notable exceptions of cases where slaves were educated enough and able to communicate with their masters enough to gain their respect and actually keep their African names. But for the most part, this didn't happen. What did happen, though, was that to each other, in private, would still refer to each other with African names, which is pretty cool. And when you get to Restoration and the Civil War era, there were a few Black families who continued naming their children after things that called back to the homeland. And they did this in a show of resistance against white oppression. Fucking cool. But it was not a widespread practice, and it didn't become a widespread practice until the mid-20th century with the rise of the civil rights movement. In the meantime, most Black families still kept giving their children Eurocentric names, short, easy, Mary, Sue, Todd, Bill, etc. And actually, as that kept happening, those names fell out of favor with white people or European people, and they started naming their children something else. Now, if you want to research what those names were, like what white names emerged during those times, you'll have to do it yourself because I didn't, and I apologize for that. But honestly, this is just a rough overview, and most of this stuff can be found with a quick Google search. So, Black names, as we understand them today, really originated in the 60s with the rise of the civil rights movement, the Back to Africa movement, Black Power, and the Nation of Islam rising within that. You had a lot of celebrities adopting Islamic names with notable examples being Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, etc. So with this whole Black empowerment movement and this Back to Africa movement and really like getting back to our roots and all of these things and really being proud of being Black, because obviously every minute we'd spent on American soil up until that point, everything, including us, was telling us that we should be ashamed and that we should feel lesser and that we were lesser, Jim Crow, blah, blah, blah. You know the history. So this idea of naming Black children things that separated us from the greater Eurocentric society really started to gain traction in the 60s and 70s, like I said, especially in lower income neighborhoods and lower income households. In the 80s, it became more and more popular to create your own names and to look at where those names came from, the created names like Jamal, well, not Jamal, but like Deshaun and stuff like that. We actually have to take a couple of steps back and look at that interim period because this gets into the history of whiteness and how that came to be. And I've seen a lot of articles actually floating around on the internet lately. People have been circulating them, kind of filling in the gaps of where our history textbooks left things out, like whiteness and how it's completely bullshit. And it was literally just created to separate people. But in the beginning, not all, and a lot of you probably know this, but in the beginning, not all Europeans were considered white. One notable example being Irish people, who would immigrate into America, immigrate to America as indentured servants. And a lot of the times they were, all the time, they were treated the same way that Black people were. They were just as bad. We worked in the same places, we lived in the same places, we rubbed elbows all the time, Black people and Irish people. And actually, I'm digressing a little bit, but the way that Irish people became white was to denounce Black people, actually. That's how the ruling class kept the lower class down, by accepting poor whites as white. So that way, they didn't see what the real problem was, which was class inequality. But they would tell, they told poor whites, Irish folks, Italian folks, etc., that, your life may be hard, but at least you're not Black. And if you hate Black people as much as the rest of us white folks hate Black people, then you're doing pretty good, Don't let them join your labor unions. Make sure that you don't talk to them. Don't go to the same places as them. Segregation, Jim Crow, and the ruling class created racism to divide and conquer the lower class. And it's so fucked up that we've kept that spirit alive. That was honestly the single greatest thing the upper class ever did, to keep poor people down. Oh my gosh, so effective, divide and conquer. Anyway, I digress. So the creation of inventing your own Black names in the 80s has a lot of influences from Irish culture, from Italian. These names are influenced by French and Spanish. It's honestly a melting pot of things, which is really cool. And honestly makes Black names as American as apple pie and baseball. And you can actually kind of start to create a formula for Black names, because you have a prefix, you have a basic name, and you have a suffix with a few punctuation marks thrown in there, like Irish people do. See O'Shea and O'Donnell. And so prefixes: L-A, D-A, L-E, D-E, a regular name, and then a suffix, O or A, usually to denote gender, which has Spanish influences. So you can create a name just like that. Take LaShonda, for example. L-A, with an Italian or French origin. And then Sean, which is a basic name, an Irish name actually, and then an A at the end to denote that it's female. La Sean Da. And you can put an apostrophe in there if you want to. Make it as ornamental as you want. Another thing that lower income Black families would do be to name their kids after things that were important to them or hopes that they had for the future. remember, that was a really important thing in a lot of African cultures. So that would be naming your kid Portia or Chiffon or Lexus, and it was a testament to things that you hoped your kid would achieve in the future, wealth and riches and luxurious items. Or it was a testament to how important your kid was to you, or it was just a statement of love, like, yeah, damn right, my kid is precious, my kid is a fucking diamond, deal with it. So that leads in, that basically covers the Black names that we see today. And it's really a great thing. It's a prideful thing. It's a very American thing, the individuality and the creativity and the pride. So why is it that we look down on Black names the way that we do? The answer lies in racism, obviously. These ideas are as old and as racist and as ingrained in our society as minstrel shows. Minstrel shows. Ugh. I have an example, and let me know if you've heard it before. There's a woman, she's just had a baby, she's lying in a hospital bed. She overhears a doctor talking about chlamydia, thinks it's pretty, and names her kid that. I've heard it a few times. You probably heard it too, or something similar. That story, that joke, it actually originates in the early 20th century. Like blackface. Like from the same place as blackface and Black people liking watermelon and fried chicken. And it's really funny because these things are so ingrained in our society that no one bats an eye at it. Black people do it to each other even. We do it to ourselves. And it's sad. I used to be one of those people that hated my name, which, by the way, French. Keontae Chanel Jeffries. And I don't feel that way anymore. And it was because of doing this research and learning about how awesome this story really is. And now I am definitely the kind of person who's like, no, I appreciate my name no matter how many doctors I have to correct, no matter how many jobs I'm denied. I'm gonna continue fighting for this shit because it's racism and it needs to stop. I didn't really think about how I was gonna end this video, actually, because I was just so excited to tell you the information. But yeah, like I said, all of the things that I mentioned in this video can honestly be found with a quick Google search. So if you want to do your own research and read more on the topic, I linked all of my sources in the description box below. Down there, you will also find a link to last year's Black History Month video, and you will also find links to all of my social media if you're a stalker and you just really can't get enough of me, which I don't know why you would feel that way, because I get enough of me like every minute of every day. Hate myself. I'm kidding. I don't. It's fine. Anyway, but yeah, thanks for going on that journey with me, guys. I put out new videos every month or so. I'm trying to get a little bit better at that, but that's where we are right now, so just fucking hang with me. Just hang with me. It's gonna be alright. Alright, guys. I'll see all of your beautiful smiling faces in the next video, okay? Bye!